Okay, I'm having a wonderful chat, long, long, long overdue, actually, I think, with a friend of many, many decades, actually, since I'm old as well as John, forgive us both, but we're there. I'm speaking with American composer John Biggs, who celebrated his 90th birthday last October and presented, as he does traditionally, a chamber music concert or performance to celebrate his music. I went down and saw that concert, and initially I was thinking, I would maybe review that performance, but I think I really would rather, and that's the point of this kind of different sort of interview, I would rather really talk to John while I've got you, when I can really nail you on the kind of an overview of your life in music, your compositional style, the status of the art in your view as we speak. I mean, that kind of stuff. But first, a little intro, and then we'll get going and let John get into the conversation a bit. Born in Los Angeles, so we're talking West Coast boy. 1932, again, 90th birthday was in 2022. Last October was the chamber concert celebration for it. You received your master's degree at the University of California, Los Angeles, and with teachers, I mean, like, and then beyond Southern California, at the University of Southern California. Jump in if I need to be corrected. Royal Flemish Conservatory in Antwerp. In other words, traveling and learning, and teachers including Roy. I mean, most of my favorites: Roy Harris, Lucas Foss, Ingolf Dahl, Flor Peters, Halsey Stevens, and Leonard Stein. I remember Leonard Stein from my days as a student at California Institute of the Arts. Um, and as an educator, you taught at Los Angeles City College, UCLA, UC Berkeley, the whole thing, and toured as composer in residence the state of Kansas, various six colleges. Just a wonderful, full and vibrant life, specializing with the John Biggs consort and its fascinating repertoire of medieval. By the way, I have a picture, a video of you. Medieval, you know probably what I'm talking about. Medieval, Renaissance, and contemporary music, if I understand and remember correctly. Vocal ensemble, pretty much, wasn't it? John Biggs consort
Vocal and
and
instrumental.
instrumental, of course. Because I remember the video I found is of you play in full costume yet, uh, with a Buster Brown haircut, wig, playing lute or something. It was lots of fun.
Yeah.
And we were all,
Minstrel.
yeah,
I was playing a minstrel.
a minstrel, okay. And by the way, the John Biggs consort toured with Columbia artists, so we're not talking small shanks here. Grants and so on it goes. But I guess what I want to ask, John, since I mean, I'm going to talk about when I first met you, my first interview with you in 1970. I think I was 20 or something. Um, what I'm kind of curious about is just people and people that watch this, how, all of us who've been in, who are in music. It's that moment. What was? Do you remember it all? That moment when at whatever age when you just it clicked that music was going to be it.
Yeah, I was probably in my experience with my father's church choir. He conducted the men's chorus, and my mother conducted the women's chorus at Blessed Sacrament Church in Hollywood, which is that's where I was born, Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I was raised in Hollywood during the golden age of filmmaking. Very exciting place to live and be. And we sang every Sunday, so I was brought up on choral music. We sang Palestrina masses. We sang masses by contemporary composers like Carl, no, Peters. Oh, what's his first name?
Floor.
He was an organist. Hmm?
Floor
Flor
Peters.
Peters.
Yeah,
Flor
Peters,
Peters.
I should say.
Yeah, yeah, Flor Peters, and he was a friend of my father's. And so was Marcel Duprat, a friend of my father. In fact, my father would get them gigs in Hollywood when they came to America. So anyway, the spark for composition came early on. My father wrote 19 masses, actually,
Hmm.
some good organ pieces, good choral pieces, and so I was steeped in it from the time I was in his choir from the age of 6 to about the age of 20. Then I left and went elsewhere and so on. but that's where the spark happened. And I wrote a Kyrie for the men's choir. I knew I could try it out right there because I was part of that men's choir. So that's where I started doing it. Then I was in the I was in the military for 2 years in Korea, and I remember doing a little writing there. And it was an early and intense beginning of of being inspired by my father and general. And I share with my partner now, Sandra Briggs. Curious, her name is Briggs, mine is Biggs. But anyway, I share with her an interesting point that uh, oh God, I forgot where I was going. Damn that!
I do that all the
I
time
should
myself.
I shouldn't swear on this, but it is a damn thing. Uh, anyway, I can't remember where I was going. Anyway, ask me another
Well,
question.
I was going to say, let's go somewhere else. You know, I do remember the chamber concert for your 90th birthday last October. I have notes about the performance, and we'll touch on some of the pieces performed because, as I may have mentioned, I'm well. Let's just start there. We're going to just fly around a bit, but what I was about to say was what impresses me is, and I was a little surprised, but you wrote at least one piece for the occasion, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
Yeah.
there were two privileges.
Okay. Well, I guess my point is, and I want to talk about that a little bit, is what is that keeps composers in this case going? Is it just a natural thing, or is it a discipline, or what? How is that? It's a leading question, I think, kind of, but might have a fun answer.
I'm um, very taken with uh, how I feel when I'm writing, because I feel I'm doing something that will last and something that will be enjoyed by people after I'm gone. That's a big plus. I'm leaving something for people to have, and after I die, I not die with, um, and it's not really looks like background. Anyway, so that's what drives a composer. Uh, you want to write things that you like, you want to hear, and you want to use the creative process because it's just a great feeling to be able to have a muse of some kind that kind of gets into your brain while you're doing this, and you're kind of I speak for myself. You're kind of in control of something else because ideas are coming to you, melodic ideas, rhythmic ideas, formal ideas, sometimes quick, sometimes with lots of pain,
Hmm.
where it takes a while to get through a piece. Sometimes pieces just fall out. My viola concerto is one of those. In fact, so furiously that I was waiting in line to get my teacher's credential in LA, and I was composing while I was standing in line. I had a manuscript. I couldn't stop. That's what happens when it's really flowing.
And by the way, I think the answer is exactly that. You can't stop. Like writers
Uh,
or any other creative people, it's just once it's in your blood, it's in your blood, and that's all there is to it. And you also mentioned a very important thing, legacy. And I want to remind everybody that many of your important works have been recorded, and I'll make sure that there are links to purchase these CDs if they're still available. Some of them may or may not be. I know that one has to be, and it's the recording of your first and second symphonies. And this is as good a time as any to just, I'm going to, again, skipping around a bit, but because we've talked about it over time, and I actually saw a live performance as we discussed. Am I jumping ahead of you? Are you okay? Of the Second Symphony in Ventura with the College Orchestra in Ventura some years back. It was composed in 1991, the Second Symphony. When was the First Symphony composed? Do you recall?
Yeah, I was on a Fulbright in Belgium in 1964-65.
So 64, 65 for the first symphony, and then 1991 for the second. Yeah, that kind of
Yeah,
space of
big,
years. Yeah. Well,
big gap.
very, very interesting, and I consider both those symphonies masterpieces. And we spoke earlier that the first symphony is tougher. I'll need to listen to it more often. But since I heard the second symphony and actually saw a performance live, because I'm so interested in that second symphony, um, I thought we'd spend a little time on it. And you mentioned just a little bit earlier about something. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but something about intensity and such. The intensity of composition and of keeping your mind working. Well, I kind of want to focus on that second symphony just for a bit, for everybody to pay attention to this symphony for these reasons, and I want you to comment on them if you don't mind. Um, I am always fascinated by a symphony that has a very, very bittersweet, slow section. That second symphony an absolutely gorgeous and heartbreaking tune in my mind. And also that second symphony ends, as you know, of course, but ends on a calming, a quietening, if I'm correct in remembering, which is also quite unique for a symphony to end that way. And I'm just going to ask just a generic question: is there something? What was going on with that second symphony, psychologically, emotionally, the whole thing? Can you just overview it, or am I being too intimate?
The Second Symphony, first of all, I was inspired by having a commission to write that um, for the Ventura County Symphony, and that's where it was premiered.
Was that Frank Salazar? Did he?
Yes,
He was still there. Yeah, he
yeah,
was wonderful. Yeah.
yeah. He also let me premiere my concerto for orchestra with that orchestra. But the Second Symphony, I talked to a person who broadcast it about 5 years ago, and he really loved it. And he recognized the form, and the form was this: it was a single long melodic line that starts high and goes through its pattern, probably about a minute and a half, to a lower key, and then it goes to another part of the symphony. That's it. That theme repeats and forms the symphony because it appears with a flute solo, and then the orchestra plays, and then an octave lower, a clarinet solo, and then the orchestra comes back and does something else, like it's A B A C A D, that
Uh-huh.
kind of form. So the orchestra comes back after the clarinet, and then the third iteration of that symphony is down another octave. Now we're down where the bassoon is, and this is all calculated because they have to be playing it. They're playing it in the same key, I think, in the same range,
Mhm.
but only an octave lower each time. So the bassoon does the third one. Then the very fourth one is done by all the strings, the violins. So that dictates where that music is going, what it's going to do at beginning, what's going to interrupt it. It just gives it form. And when you talked about these quiet ending, that's the way that melody really ends. Because remember, it's going from a high range to a low range,
Uh-huh. Uh,
and when it gets there, it slows down a bit and then just fades out at the last when the violins happen. So that gave that symphony a really good structure.
you gave me a very good answer, and it was pretty much what I was expecting, and it sort of asks another question, which I didn't get to, which is style, structure. I know you're a style structure guy. You chart everything, I believe, from talking with you over these many, many years. But is there anything else so I can allow myself to understand that my heart was broken two or three times by that gorgeous the moment I call it the gorgeous tunes, but this that's shimmering it's a kind of haunted, shimmering sort of, or is that just me?
I'm trying to think of the specific
Let me
part
see.
that you're talking about.
Well, it's after the segue from the slow section, slow movement, and there's a kind of I guess it's about midway through the symphony. It's in that middle area before it spunks up a little bit. The next to last section, I guess, there's some vigor and all over the place, and then does this quiet exit. Did that help at all?
Well, some people have told me a number of times over my lifetime that they like my slow, quiet writing, and they, in fact, like that better than my fast writing because it has more emotion.
Does it? That's a loaded question. Or is it
Well,
structure? See what where
I,
I'm trying to go with this?
yeah, uh, melodies can by themselves move a person to have emotions.
Sure.
When Robert Kraft was working with Stravinsky, uh, during that time, Stravinsky made a quote that I think he later was sad he had made. He said, "Music cannot express emotion," and I think that that's not true. I
Good.
think it's
I'm
certainly
glad to hear that. Yeah, from you.
we can. If it couldn't express emotion, I don't think I'd be interested in writing it.
Exactly, and I also think Stravinsky did have second thoughts. I don't believe that he meant what he said.
Yeah, well, Robert Kraft had a very strong influence on him,
Mm,
and Robert Kraft was very much into Boulez and
mm.
with that group and the far out kind of harmonies and melodies were being. In fact, he directed Stravinsky into. It wasn't like Stravinsky. In fact, I sang on a recording of some of the most difficult choral music. It'll never, nobody will ever perform it. It's like Hindemith is a great composer, but his mass that he wrote is so difficult that nobody's going to do it. I did one movement of it. It was gorgeous section of it, but and I had the best musicians. Um, but generally speaking, nobody's going to perform that piece. Too hard.
Mhm. And when I think of Stravinsky and romanticism and emotionalism, I keep thinking of the Rake's Progress. To be honest, it just pops out at me as just this masterpiece of wit but also great emotion and so on. In other words, that he was fibbing to himself that there was no emotion in music. I love that opera.
Yeah, I got to see it at USC,
Ah,
probably in the '60s. They did a full performance of the Rake's Progress.
yeah,
It's
and
a very neoclassic
yeah,
uh,
very much
piece.
so. Yeah. Well,
What's that?
then I think that kind of answered the question about that second symphony. But I really adore. I guess maybe what we're going to talk about now is uh, is you've. Uh, I'm happy with your real sense of. Am I okay with declaring you really careful about structure and form and certainly orchestration? You're a master
Yeah,
of orchestration in your works, in all of them, chamber works, but the symphonies in particular, fabulous. But also that you have just said, I write pretty melodies, emotional melodies. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
because you do.
About the structure. In my 85th birthday celebration, I closed with my wind octet, and a fellow who didn't know it all came up afterward, and he said, "See, you saved the best for the end."
Nice,
And
nice.
that's a piece that probably nobody will ever know about because it's for eight winds and about 16 minutes long, and it's a very strong piece, but I don't know if it'll ever see a light of day again. Sad.
Well, let's go there for a minute. You're leading the conversation brilliantly. Thanks, John. Because we would, you have composed, well, so much, a huge uh, catalog of work. And it's the, I don't want to sound like, I don't want either of us to sound like broken records, but it's tough. lots of composers, lots of works being written, hard to get performances. You know, audiences tend still to be rather conservative, certainly in North America. And so my question is how is that? I mean, what you've just said this legacy and the drive and that what is in your head has to come out, but how do you compensate these problems? I'm thinking of your two operas. I've got them down here. Tell us about the two operas. They're wonderful. I saw one in live performance again at Ventura College. That place has become a big supporter of music for a long, long time, of new music and adventurous programming. So, sorry, go ahead.
Very good. They had a very good music department,
Yeah.
and soprano who was the producer of both of those operas. The way I knew her was I fell in love with a very fine painter who lived in Ventura, Carol. And Carol was a very close friend of Linda Otson, who is the woman that ultimately produced my two operas. And Linda was a fine soprano. She performed at Carol's house or at Linda's house a number of times. Anyway, the oh God, I I lost it again. We're talking about
Well, we're talking
oh
about
yes,
why. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
the two operas.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so Linda, oh yes, Carol went over to Linda's house one time and she said, I have a new boyfriend. Oh, really? Tell me about him. Well, his name is John Biggs. And she said, does he have a consort? She said, I, I think so. Why? Because I heard the John Biggs consort at Illinois University when I was a student there, and I never forgot it.
Hmm.
Is that why you're going with now? So that was the connection. And then a couple of years went by, and then I always wanted to set Oscar Wilde's Importance of Being Earnest. I had had it in the back of my head for years. And Linda's, why don't you write us an opera? We have an opera workshop here. Uh, could you do that? I said, and so I spent months writing Ernest Worthing, and it was on the importance of being earnest. It was a natural for opera because there are no less than four duos, a priest and a woman that he's kind of interested in, and then three, let's see, three different, two different uh, duos, people, and and I just used piano to performable in more places, and so it was a piano, seven singers, and two butlers, and that was it. And both of my operas got beautiful reviews, including the LA Times. Um, the LA Times for Hobson's Choice had a section in the paper at the end of the year about highlights of music in the LA area, and they said we would pick John Biggs's Hobson's Choice as a highlight of the year for new music.
Let's stop right there for a second because I can vouch that the LA Times does serve a huge, massive city, and people struggle and struggle to get any kind of mention, let alone even a concert listed in the LA Times. You know what I mean? It's hard. So that's a huge acknowledgement by the Los Angeles Times. Just to make everybody clear, we're talking about two operas. The opera Hobson's Choice, based on the English playwright Harold Brighouse's play.
Yeah.
What that was the first of the two?
No, Ernest Worthing was the first. It was so popular. They would have continued in that same auditorium, but they lost the auditorium because the school year started, and
Oh
they
yeah,
otherwise they would have gone on.
yeah. And I
They both operas were extended for two weekends.
mhm. And I
Last
remember attending Ernest Worthing. And now here's a very interesting question because you've even described it. A beautiful little chamber opera, piano, nothing huge. The whole piece was in a black box, if you will, space of one spot set with sets and things. Say again.
130 seats.
130 seats. But the idea is it should, you quite deliberately created a chamber opera, very accessible, wonderful play that everybody loves. Uh, and so there it is, the frustration of how about Ernest Worthing? Have you, has it been performed a little bit around since? I can't remember quite when
Yeah.
that was.
Since that premiere, it was performed in at oh Augustana College near Chicago, about 100 miles from
Mm.
Chicago, and it was performed in Detroit at West. Oh, what's the big college there? University. In fact, my first wife went there, and
Not
Lily
me.
Tomlin. Uh, Tomlin was there. I can't remember the name of the school. I should. Maybe it'll come to me later. But it was performed there, so
Okay.
it's had okay. It's had two performances, so that means one performance every 11 years. Isn't that wonderful?
Well, it is better than par for the course. How's that?
Well, that opera, that chamber opera deserves many more performances than that.
It does. It was absolutely delightful. And speaking of song, being a songsmith, I mean, and clever and all the rest of it. Everything you touch, you know what you're doing. I hate to keep lingering. Oh, yeah,
One thing the reviewer said, and he that was really a wonderful thing to hear. He said you couldn't tell the different. You couldn't tell where the seams were
mm,
between John's music and Wilde's
oh,
words. The lyrics, all the
perfect.
things, all fit together so beautifully. You couldn't tell it was by two different
Yeah.
minds.
Yes, and you're bringing a flood of memories back to me from seeing that performance at Ventura College, and that critic actually put his finger on the magic when a composer blends so perfectly with the play. If you will, understands the play so well, loves the play so well, that the music works perfectly with the play. I remember kind of. Let me see what else we got. So we've touched on the operas. Good. I'm glad we got there. What else?
One more thing I wanted to say about
Sure.
Hobson's Choice.
Yeah, please.
I saw I saw the black and white film, which was directed by um, David Lean. Yes, David. Well, what's that?
Well, unfortunately, it's the clock going off. Hang on.
Anyway,
There we. There we go.
David Lean, who's no slouch. I mean, he did the Duchess of Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia and so on.
Yeah.
And he did a film on Harold uh, Hobson's Choice. I saw it in 1950 when it came out. Charles Laughton played Hobson,
Mm.
and I absolutely fell in love with that play. And I thought this would make a good opera. 35 years later or 40 years later, I did it.
Yeah, and there's got to be something there. It's not frustrating. It's just that when things are ready to pop out, they pop out. Something like that. You have to just.
I had the momentum of having the producer and the director ask me for another
There you
opera.
go.
I
Bingo.
didn't need that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Need more than that.
So there you go. Things happen when they're supposed to happen. Even. I
You
really,
know.
really believe in that. I remember, I want to talk a little bit about another sort of problem. You and I touched on it before we taped, but I find it really, really fascinating, and I was an eyewitness, if you will. And I remember attending a rehearsal of your violin concerto, which has not been recorded. Maybe one day it will be recorded. Um, I don't
Oh,
remember the
no,
Pardon?
it is recorded.
Oh, is it?
It is recorded.
I beg your
Yeah,
pardon.
oh yeah.
I beg your pardon. Well, I'm
Yeah,
glad to hear that. I'll chase it down then and get it up on the site because I remember it was the premiere of the concerto. It was in Santa Barbara at the Music Academy of the West, and there was a rehearsal before. At least I think at least the rehearsal was at the Academy, as I recall. And Nina Bodnar was the violinist, was the violin soloist, and I think, had just come back from her stint as concertmaster of the St. Louis Symphony, or was in between, whatever. Wonderful
It was
violinist. Say again?
it was before, yeah,
Or was
before
it?
this, she St. Louis.
Aha. Thanks for that clarification. So that was a while ago. Do you remember when that concerto came out?
Yeah, 19, let's see, 1979.
Wow. Wow, I can't even remember being alive in 1979, I remember this whole situation so vividly. And here's the point of my question. I've mentioned it before to you. Nina, brilliant, a brand new violin concerto, and she was having trouble. She was kind of complaining that this was too hard to play. The usual that sometimes happens with new music and people being maybe a little bit fearful. And I remember watching you, and it's exactly the job of the composer, because you've known Nina. I've known Nina Bodnar since she was 9 or something. You kind of took her aside and helped her, calmed her a little bit, and showed her ways to solve problems. I mean, I wasn't peering over your shoulders, but it was clear that you were showing and even discussed ways to make passages that seemed difficult come off nicely.
Well, she was having trouble with a section that has doubles. Have to play more than one. You're playing two notes at a time and going around. And I worked it out uh, fingering because I played violin when I was a kid, and you have to work on fingering so that the it's not uncomfortable playing it. And when I pulled Nina aside, I said, Nina, I conceived it as fingering it this way. And she said, what way? Show me. And I said, finger it this way, the way I conceived of it, and it'll be a lot easier. And she tries it, and she said, you're right. She said, you're right. I'm not a violinist, but I remembered what I learned about violin,
Mm.
and that was really nice. I was able to tell a violinist of her stature, give her an idea about a different fingering, and it'll work.
And then off she goes to St. Louis, apparently, right? After some time after that, yeah.
Yeah, under
Uh,
Leonard Slack.
and that is, I guess, what I kind of in capsule. Do you encounter this? Have you over the years encountered this, where you have to help people understand how to play a piece? I don't mean intellectually or anything. I just mean just even the technique.
Well, no, I haven't had to do that very much. My music is, down to earth as far as being able to be done by people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that usually, it's usually idiomatic, and I don't get many complaints of things not being able to be played very well. I'm very careful about that.
Well, there you go. That's correct, and that leads me right into the variations on a theme of Shostakovich. Again, let me just do my little intro. It's I'm trying to sort of hit on pieces that I have actually witnessed with my own eyes, and I was reminded today by you that I've just forgotten her name. See, I'm having the same thing. Um, the pianist.
Betty Ober.
Betty Oberacher, who was chairman of the music department at University of California, Santa Barbara, a wonderful pianist. We all know her for these many years. Anyway, Betty Oberacher played the premiere of this concerto, really, for piano and orchestra, variations on a theme of Shostakovich in Santa Barbara with the Santa Barbara Symphony, and then recorded it. Also, it's been recorded. Now that sounds like a very tough piano part.
No, it's not. So, uh,
Oh, good.
no,
I'll
it's
order
not.
it for my own intermediate level of piano playing. No, just kidding. Sounds hard.
Yeah, it's not a difficult part. But let me tell you the genesis of that piece.
Please.
Okay, I had a commission Santa Barbara Symphony to learn a piece. I had met Betty. She came to Santa Barbara this in 1972. She went to teach at UCSB, and I was there, tuning pianos to make a living. Anyway, I got this commission from the Santa Barbara Symphony, and I was trying to think what should I write, and I went to a concert, and they were doing the fantasy on a theme of what is it by Rachmaninoff? It's
Paganini?
uh, fantasy on a theme of Paganini, one of his greatest pieces, one of his
Yeah.
most performed pieces. I was sitting there and thinking, it was for piano and orchestra, and I thought, oh, I just met a pianist, Betty Oberecker. Maybe I could talk to her and see if she'd play this thing. And so I talked to her. If I wrote a piece for you and Santa Barbara Symphony, would you play it? Of course. So that's how that came about. But before I do part, there's a part that came in the interim, and that was what variations, a concerto, or what? And then Shostakovich died, and I thought, oh, geez, I really should honor him some way. So I looked in my life. I think I have an autographed copy of his string quartet, and I looked in my library. Sure enough, first string quartet of Shostakovich. I had bought it and taken it down to USC when he visited USC one time, and I have some signed copies of music by Stravinsky, Copland, and Shostakovich.
So to answer
I have that.
my question is, so the theme is a theme from that first quartet of Shostakovich's that you play with?
Yes, it's like Barber took the second movement of his string quartet to create the famous Adagio for string. I went to that string quartet knowing that Shostakovich had just died, and I thought I looked at the second one, which starts with a viola solo, and it's a beautiful long melody, and I thought that's what I'm going to do variations on. So that's the way that piece got conceived. And I have my foot in the door because my main theme was already written. You know, I just had to spin it out and make it 2 minutes long
Yeah,
and with variations.
you're so modest about that. Oh, the tune was already there. I just had to spread it out 21 minutes, and it's a pretty crazy and feisty 21 minutes. I'm just again listened to it again for the first time this morning, kind of getting ready for our interview, and it's amazing how you hear. You know, you do need to hear things many times over years to finally sort of hear stuff, and that was my experience with this variations. I remember getting kind of lost in it the first maybe when I first heard it. I think I even may have reviewed it for that symphony concert. I can't remember. It's too long ago now. Or maybe I don't know. Anyway, bottom line is today listening to it, I could hear so much better the craft now. Hearing it for the sixth or seventh or eighth time, and there are some. You are just really a master of orchestration. I love your orchestration tricks and colors and snaps, and you know what I'm talking about. A couple of those variations are like a whip snapping. They're so fun and exciting.
They're kind of jazzy at times.
Even
You know,
anyway,
I'm very
that's
proud of that.
yeah, it's a beauty. It really is a wonderful. So there's these large orchestral works. I guess I have not heard the viola concerto. Uh, Probably haven't. Have I or not?
To go with variations. Um,
Yeah, please.
the thing is, I was so sad that Shostakovich couldn't see what I had done with his theme, but his son um,
My,
escaped from Russia. You know, he did it. He went to London. He was conducting in London, and he had arranged to get a plane to America by secret, and he got out of Russia. Um, his name was, let's see, what was his
Maxime,
first name? Uh,
Maxime, Maxime.
see,
Yeah, great story.
I met him in San, where he was a guest conductor. Drove up there to hand him my score of variations on the theme of Shostakovich, and I said, "Look, you're a pianist, and this is a piece written on your father's music, and I think it'd be great if you do it. Take a look at it. And he didn't. He took the score, but never did it. I don't know what's happened to him. He was conducting in New Orleans or someplace.
Yeah, I haven't heard much from him either in let's say a decade. Now that you mention it, yeah.
Good pianist too.
Tell me about Consort Press.
Consort Press. Yeah, it was almost Larkspur Press. I was trying to do a name it when we were driving south to Marin County, and I thought thinking of names for it, but I gave it Consort Press because that really ties into me. Um, Consort Press was my creation, and it was my published published my own music, and its imprint is impression imprint is on all my music actually.
So you
It's a
are,
catalog, my complete it's my complete catalog of
yeah,
music.
yeah. And this Once Upon a Time was kind of unique, I think. Uh, why don't you have a major publisher, that kind of stuff. But now everybody publishes their stuff everywhere all the time, and I think it's great.
It's easy to do, and even and with the way we can reproduce stuff, and things are easier nowadays than they were. Also, I didn't want to struggle with trying to interest publishers in my music. I'd rather, you know, do it myself. I just wanted to be in control.
Uh-huh. No, I think that's exactly correct, frankly, these days, you know. And also there is you kind of mentioned that problem. We've touched on it a couple of times, which is you present a score, you offer a piece to someone to look at or to a conductor or something, and I don't think it's ever intentional. I just think people just get inundated with stuff, and it gets lost in the heaps of scores and proposals and all the rest of it.
Well, I wrote a letter to Gustavo Dudamel about 5 years ago. I said I was born and raised in Los Angeles. Uh, I have had really excellent performances over the years and excellent reviews. But no, but the my own hometown orchestra has never performed anything of mine.
Mhm.
I wish you.
Excuse me, my aging cat is passing through. She's noisy. She'll settle down. Animals. She's about 20.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and has some some things are starting to dysfunction, including her kidneys. So anyway, enough of cats. Where were you? You
That
wrote Dudamel, yeah,
that's a
and
long life for a cat.
it is,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I never got an answer. So then he came to Santa Barbara, and I let's see, I was back wanted to meet him, and this fellow that was back there said, "And may I help you, sir?" Yes, I want to give this letter to Gustavo, if I may, and I will give it to him. I can take care of that for you. Well, I really kind of wanted to give it to him myself. No, don't worry about that. I assure you I'll get it to him. Uh, well, nothing happened.
Mhm.
Nothing. And then, like, 5 years, in fact, I think it was last year, I sent him a registered letter, and someone else signed it for him. And it was a letter from a composer who was born in L.A., has established himself as a good composer, and I don't even get an answer. It's really very cruel.
It's just the massiveness of the people you're chasing. I mean, the Dudamel there must be people trying to pass letters to him all the time and so on and so forth. So again, I don't think it's particularly personal at all. But it does you touch, and you have for many years. I'm trying to figure out a way to put this about this business of how come some people, some composers, let's just deal with composers, the passageways work, the things happen, stuff happens, and other composers they just can't seem to get through. In a sense, you have, of course, because you've recorded many things. But these kind of examples, for example, that the Los Angeles Philharmonic hasn't yet performed either of your two symphonies. Is there what are your thoughts on that? I mean, in my own mind, it's tough out there. There's a lot of competition. It's just the name of the game.
When I came back from Europe, after having written my first symphony, I was naive enough to think that Zubin Mehta might be interested in doing it because I was a local boy and so on. So I gave it to the manager of the orchestra, who was very friendly with me, and I thought he was going to help, but nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a certain courtesy that behind which means that it goes into the circular file. Oh, thank you very much. We're so happy to hear you, Mr. Biggs, and thanks so much. And I'll certainly pass this on into the circular
Oh,
file.
I have a wonderful story for you, and it's about oh gosh, what was his name? He preceded Dudamel. Who
Um,
was there? Oh,
Esa-Pekka
it's a,
Salonen, I think,
okay,
before
I'm
Esa-Pekka.
trying to. Yeah. Anyway, he had a big name, and he was there for a number of years.
Yes,
And
he was an Italian. It's going to
yes,
come to us both. Yeah. Anyway.
okay. So here's another story. He, let's see, how did this happen? Yes, I was in touch with his manager, and she asked me to go ahead and send I think it was my first symphony, or maybe it was the Shostakovich variations. She said, yes, please send it to us. The maestro will take a look at it. And a month went by, 2 months went by, 3 months. So I wrote them again, and as he looked at it all, and there was some kind of a thing where she said, "Oh, he plans to. He will." Yeah. And then I got the score back in the mail with a nice letter from her saying, "No, it was from oh, it's the guy, Ernest Fleischman. Everybody hated him down there. Anyway,
Yeah.
it was a message from him on Symphony Stationery. Um, Mr. What's his name? He did look at your symphony and felt that it wasn't right for next season, and so we'll be in touch with you later. Some standard.
Yeah.
So, but he said he looked at it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I was at UCLA, and I knew that he was going to be conducting the Roger Wagner chorale because they were doing a big work with a chorus and orchestra. So I went to the rehearsal. I was sitting in there, and I had my score there. And Roger was a friend of mine. Anyway, I was out in the hallway after the rehearsal, and I approached the conductor. I said, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever seen this score? And he looked at it, and no, no, I've never seen this score. Thank you. And Roger was standing there. Oh, this is a fine composer. You should take a look at it. And so he said, send it to me again. Uh, Send it to me again. So they were lying. They were lying to me. He had never seen it. They had never given it to him.
Well, that's
And
diplomacy. I mean, that. And Fleischman was hated for a lot of reasons, and maybe even including this. But I'm amazed Fleischman would have even bothered to send you a little lie. A little note that. You see what I mean? So it's
so
cutthroat, isn't it? It's just
the conductor invited me to come up to his house so I could be there while he listened to it. He went into another room, and I was sitting in the other room, and he listened to it. He came out, and
Who is this?
I, what?
Who is this that listened to it?
The conductor that we can't remember his name, the
I want
Italian
to say
conductor.
Giancarlo or something like that. Anyway, yeah.
Anyway, he came out and he said, it's a good piece. It lacks a little bit of this or that, and made some statement about it. And well, thank you very much for looking at it. And does it start with M?
Mm, So it's somewhere there. It'll come back to us. And he was a great conductor, fabulous, world famous
Okay,
conductor.
so he came back and he came back into my room and said he had listened to it and he liked it, but it wasn't quite for him. And uh, I realized somebody told me that Fleischman kind of, if he had, let's see, if he had done it after Fleischman told me, he knew Fleischman told me that he hadn't looked at it, that he had looked at it, so he knew Fleischman had lied. And I think the politics was if he had done my symphony after Fleischman had told me that he looked at it and didn't, didn't want to do it, that would reflect on Fleischman, and he didn't want to do that.
That's
That's
a good theory. Basically, it's complicated. Politics are politics. Business is business. It's a rough
yeah.
field out there. But let's get cheerful, shall we? I would like to talk about another aspect of your music, which is this tongue-in-cheek thing.
Uh,
Your amusing stuff. You
yeah.
like
After concert, it was nice to hear class music that could make people laugh.
like Mechanical Man.
Yeah. Oh, you've seen that?
I saw it. If I'm not mistaken, I saw it at the whatchamacallit at your 90th. Did I? I could have sworn. Maybe it was an encore, Mechanical Man. Anyway, I've seen it.
Mechanical Man is on YouTube.
It is,
It's on
yes.
it's on my YouTube site.
Do I have your permission to post it?
Sure. You don't
Great.
need permission to post things.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to check. But what is this? Because, or can you get? Come on, give me something. Play with me on this, which is that you have a sense of humor.
Yeah. Set the wall that opened my big song cycle for baritone and piano, and that's a hell of a funny poem. Um, and I consider humorous. Uh, in that same cycle, there's a setting of a dentist's dentist directions after tooth extraction, and it's called just called The Dentist. And it was a Santa Barbara dentist, uh, and my friend Michael Zarat, who is a very fine conductor, he's no longer with us. He had his tooth extracted. I visited him, and he had these instructions from the dentist on count it up, and there's tooth extraction. Here's what you're supposed to do. And I thought, great aria, and so I I did it. I did it. In fact, one person, a baritone, when I was composer in residence in Kansas, he uh, he performed it, and the curtain closed before he came out, and they had found a dental chair someplace with a clinic and everything, and he had a bandage around his chin, and he performed the whole thing from a dental chair,
And I liked.
and it was
I listened because
everybody loved.
sorry, we get a little bit of overlap. I think of you mainly because my interest is in orchestral music and instrumental music, but I keep forgetting that whole other side of you, which is choral music. And since we're on the comic, uh, sort of your tongue-in-cheek sense of humor, I did watch today Auction Cries, whatever, South Dakota
Oh,
State College Orchestra Chorus. Very, very funny. Yeah.
yeah, that was taken right out of the newspaper in the Emporia, Kansas Gazette. My wife Sally said, "John, look at this text. It has the names of birds in different groupings, and they're strange and wonderful." She gave it to me, and I said it. It was a great uh, joy to set that. And birds. Birds is also a humorous piece, which is also groupings of animals, birds in different categories. A gaggle of geese, a wisp of snipes, a battling of ducks,
A
a
Murder of
congregation.
Crows.
Oh yeah, maybe I didn't get that one in there. Um, but yeah, I like humor.
Because we didn't want to have people think you were, too entirely serious, a symphonist chasing all those world famous conductors and all that stuff with the symphony. I'm looking at. I'm just kind of looking over this program from last October, and some of my notes, and and this may speak something to the nature of the sounds and temperament that you create. I'm looking at the very first piece, Three Preludes, which is for clarinet and piano. Remember that? I'm sure you remember that piece. And all I wrote after that was, and this don't take offense, but I wrote Bernstein, and you know what I mean. I mean that kind of color, that kind of use of jazz and so on. You want to just talk about influences or not, or is it
Well,
the age you lived in and so on? You know what I'm trying to say?
I think if anybody influenced that, it would be Bernstein because it's not that I used any material from
No, yeah.
Bernstein. It's just that I feel a kinship to him in that piece, and so you picked up on it, and I didn't even realize I was doing it, but that's the way it came out.
That is the way it
So,
comes out, and it's also very American, whatever that means. You know, like Ma Vlast is very Czech somehow. The tunes, the river imagery, and all that. These three preludes remind me of the clarinet sonata, the Bernstein clarinet sonata, and that's kind of what I was getting at. But you remember when you composed three preludes? Uh-uh.
your image stopped.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I just noticed that too. We'll carry on. Did you get my question? Which is, do you remember when you composed the year that you
I
composed
think
three?
we ran out of time, maybe.
No, no. Do you remember? It's that we've had a kind of a slow. The reception has come and gone a little bit. So, but we're back on now. Do you remember when you composed three preludes, the clarinet piece?
Three Preludes.
Clarinet.
That was written when I lived in Ventura, and around 1988, something
Oh,
like that.
okay. So that didn't fit my. I had a theory that you might have written three preludes much earlier, maybe in the 50s or something. I was gonna. That was what I meant about a sort of sound ambiance about American music in the 50s and 60s and so on. But there's that jazz influence in Bernstein anyway, and this Americanness of music, which always gets me in trouble. Uh, um, so that let me see what else I want to talk about. We've talked about the sense of humor because I was really quite surprised to because I think you did Mechanical Man as an encore. I believe you did at that concert on October because they brought you out, stomped you down, you're all wrapped up, and you've got your spaceman's hat on. Yeah?
Yeah, yeah, that was my two grandsons that carried me out. It was that was in 19 20 2000, and it was in Santa Paula Art Center,
Uh huh.
Santa Paula Theater.
Uh huh.
That's where, and it
The,
was in the not as an encore, but it was in the program.
okay, but I'm trying to remember whether I did actually see it on your 90th birthday as an encore. Do you remember whether you got up in that garb? I could swear I was an eyewitness to that piece.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
unless you went down to hear that 2009
No,
concert,
no.
you might have.
Well, so it certainly sticks in the mind. I'm going to definitely put that particular video up because it's a cutie. And also Alphabet. Is there anything about kids and grandkids and such that you know that piece? I mean, the idea
Yeah,
of the focus of
that
your
was
interest to create that cute little alphabet piece.
yeah. That was a series of 1 minute kind of publishing or getting out there. Uh, Composers who would write 1 minute pieces for him, and that was one of the ones I did. And I just took the alphabet and set it. I have two versions, two visual versions, the same music. One is with the little mechanical um, elephant, little cloth elephant that
Yep.
was singing it and, and or speaking it, and the other one is just animated letters going by.
Oh, I
So
see.
there are two.
I saw
Yeah,
the one with the cloth
two.
elephant. That's up
Oh,
on you
okay.
on YouTube, and also something about sackbuts. I can't remember the piece, but it's literally an animation to a piece for that instrument.
Oh, those are crumb
Thank you,
horns.
crumhorn.
Yeah.
That was the word I was looking for.
Okay, the story behind that is I was going to do another 1 minute piece for this guy, and I was going to sell my crumb horns at about this time. And I thought, gee, I don't have these crumb horns on tape. I'd like to get them on tape as a family, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. So I recorded the quartet playing all four parts. And it was a march. And there they are. And the artist took them marching down a country road and right,
Yes, that's right.
and they're marching ahead.
It's the is the word serendipity or synchronicity of the way things come together. That's what's so interesting. Something will come up over here, and you'll have a thought about it over there, and all of a sudden, before you know it, it's spun itself into a piece of creative work. I mean,
Uh-huh. Right.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking also of one of the great exposures of the second, some themes from the Second Symphony, is that beautiful documentary on what's the river down in the Ventura area that you did a documentary on?
Oh, Clara.
Santa Clara River. How did that come about? I mean,
Yeah.
in other words, do people come to you, or do you have? How does that work? What's the interchange about? Just in
There were
general.
three women. Uh, there were three women who lived in Santa Rosa, who all were familiar with my music, and they said, "John, we're trying to get people to realize how beautiful the Santa Rosa River is, and would you be willing to write a piece that might be able to express it?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to do it," but it didn't work. I couldn't do it with just music. I wanted to have visual. So I called them and I said, "May I may I turn it into a video rather than just an audio recording or something that people can play in a concert? Because that's not going to get the distribution that you want. But a video would. You could use it in libraries and so on." So I got together with a film editor and put together uh, I requisitioned footage from various people who, and they donated some of their footage that they Santa Clara River, and they allowed me to use them, and so I fused them to synchronize uh, with parts of the second, and so that's how I put that together.
Are you a collaboratist? Is that the right word? Are you a collaborative artist? It seems like collaboration is runs in your blood. You always seem to find the right people. You've got an idea, and a filmmaker is mowing his lawn next door, or you've got, you know what I mean? It's uncanny. Or you're thinking of this piece with the crumhorns and all of it, and you also kind of know an animation guy and so on. Am I all wet
Well,
here?
I find people, um, talented people, who will fit the bill of what I need in this next piece. It's happened on several pieces.
Yeah. So you do the search. You're in charge of the search. You say, this is the idea. Now I need, how about if this were animated? I'm just thinking of the Crumhorn piece. Let me see if I can find somebody that I know that's an animator. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah.
I think we better run it down here. Let me see. I just, I guess I'm going to ask you, what is a couple of things. Give me kind of an assessment of what you have seen in the course of your career, and there's more to come, of course, but can I get any kind of an overview of what you think the health of of the high arts in the United States? And people tend to put it down a lot, I think, but there are very encouraging signs as well as some of the tough stuff. I hope I didn't set you up there, but give me kind of an overview, what you remember from earlier years and how things went in the 70s and 80s, and how you think things are going. You know what I mean about just our art form.
for me as a composer at 90, I'm sad. Um, I'm sad about uh, the direction of what you when you finish a piece, and it's not the old avenue. You don't take it to a conductor and hope that he or she will perform it. Usually, I had good luck with that, but that's it. It's really a dead end in many cases, and it's a very sad situation. Also, the whole thing about recording music and the death of the CD, that's very sad, and the complicated way to get it into streaming uh, streaming music because people are no longer listening to CDs; they're streaming music on earphones as they jog, as they drive. In fact, Sandra, my partner, has a Tesla, and on the Tesla screen, and so she can, anybody that likes music, and Spotify has built repertoire for people, and all kinds of music, and that's the way it's going now. Um, it's going to happen. I don't know where that's going to go, and in relation to music being performed in a um, it's an old way that's gone. I think
You mean live
disappearing.
performance?
Well, no, um, live performance will always be there. I think people. It's like going to a play rather than a film. People will still do that because they want to see the actual people on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'll always be the same, I think. It's just that audiences are apparently going to be smaller. In my own view, I think that the COVID couple of years of solitude for the planet have has very powerfully affected behavior, and I think people are staying home a whole lot more after 2 years of being at home. You know how there's the talk about office buildings are empty, and I'm noticing concerts, the orchestras are it's starting to come back, but they're having a hard time bringing people back into the concert hall. But as you said, there'll always be an audience, there'll always be people reading and so on.
Hopefully,
Yeah, hopefully it can't get much worse, can it? In terms of literacy. Well, that was cheerful. Thanks so much. I'm going to take us back up to the top. We're done, John, so you can go to bed, and I can go to bed, actually. John Biggs, American composer John Biggs, October 18th, 1932. Date of birth, 90 years old last October. As you can see and hear, still going strong. The mind is there. The body is still there. I remember you used to do the U.S. Army whatever exercise manual. I don't know if you still do that. Do you?
okay. Manual.
The exercise manual. You know, the push-ups, the sit-ups.
Right. It's a Canadian military manual.
Therefore, much more sensible than the American.
Well,
Anyway, so you,
it keeps me limber.
yeah. So you're still doing it. That's the answer to my question. Anyway, it's been a great opportunity to just kind of talk for an hour and get a kind of an overview of things. I think people are really going to enjoy this, and I hope I'll be able to turn some people, some organizations. I know it's a hard row to hoe, but onto some of your music, because we'll put all that up at performingartsreview.net, videos, links to purchase, and all the rest of it. John, thanks very much indeed for uh, giving me the time.
Thank you.